Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're diving into something really big. How Catholicism has been labeled a cult all throughout history, especially here in America. We'll start with the very first points in colonial times, then move through propaganda and the anti-Catholic movements from the 1800s. And then we'll look at all those ideas and see how it's spun into the anti-Catholic movement today that we're seeing online, showing up in things like QAnon and conspiracy theories about the Vatican. There's a lot to cover today, so I want to make sure that you stick with me till the end, because when you see the full picture, you'll see how these ideas developed and have impacted our society to this very day. I also want to pause a minute just to thank you so much for being here. Your comments and feedback are so helpful to me. They give me new ideas for videos, but then they also give me a lot to think about. It actually helps me grow in my faith. Keep sharing your ideas in the comments. It really makes a difference. All right. Let's get started. I'm gonna break this into two parts. We're gonna take a look at the Protestant evangelical influence into cults and if there's anything comparable with the Catholic Church. Now here, cult means anything that's outside of the mainstream Christianity teaching, often with authoritarian control, unique revelation, and deviation from Orthodox teaching. Many of these started with Protestant or evangelical principles. There are a lot of evangelical prosperity gospel style cults that have popped up. Unquestioned authority and financial exploitation. Have there been Catholic inspired cults? Catholicism is hierarchical, I can't pronounce that word, and sacramental with authority linked to the higher magisterium. That makes these breakaway cults a lot less common, mainly because they become schisms, not isolated cults. Now, with Protestantism, it's not centralized, so there's a lot more room for different sects to just break off and start their own thing. Now, there have been some of these fringe Catholic groups, but when they do pop up, the Vatican will quickly denounce them and label them as heretical, and that's the end of it. And many of these fringe groups typically claim some type of Marian visions or some kind of papal authority. This is one of the most important parts of the video. Let's figure out how Catholicism got labeled a cult in early American history. First, we have the colonial America and the Protestant lens. So in the early 1600s, Puritans and Pilgrims, mostly settlers in colonial New England, were fiercely Protestant. They were shaped by the Reformation. They saw Catholicism as the enemy of true Christianity, corrupt, idolatrous, and authoritarian. Their ideology was that the Pope was called the Antichrist. Catholic rituals were viewed as superstition and manipulation. Catholics were believed to be blindly following Rome instead of Scripture. And the result from this from the very beginning is that Catholics were suspect. Anti-Catholic laws were written in some colonies forbidding Catholic worship or office holding. Now we're going to move to the 18th and 19th century anti-Catholic propaganda. There were immigration waves of Irish, Italian, and Polish Catholics. So native-born Protestants feared being overrun by Catholics. There started these Nativist movements. So there was one called the Know Nothings from 1840 to 1850. They were a political party that accused Catholics of being loyal to the Pope over America. They claimed Catholicism was not a religion, but a political cult. Now we have books and pamphlets. This one is really interesting. A book was called The Awful Disclosures of Maria Monk, put out in 1836. This was a sensational fake memoir of a nun describing abuse in convents. It was hugely influential in branding Catholicism as sinister. Now we're going to move into the 20th century for the mainstream anti-Catholicism. One of the first ones started with the KKK in the 1920s. They targeted Catholics along with Jews and Black Americans. Catholics were accused of blind obedience to priests, brainwashing children in school, and practicing strange rituals. Mass was seen as occultish by some people. And there were evangelical preachers who increasingly portrayed Catholicism as not Christianity at all, but a pagan cult. Now we're going to the mid-late 20th century. This started the fundamentalist and evangelical cult language. Some of you may have heard of the Jack Chick comics. These started from 1960s up until about the 2000s. These were hugely influential tracts called Catholicism, a Satanic Cult, accused priests of abuse, the Vatican of controlling world governments, and the Mass of being idolatry. There were fundamentalist ministries. Many classified Catholicism alongside Mormonism or Jehovah's Witnesses as a cult in their apologetics literature. Their main ideology was that the Catholic Church hides the Bible and enslaves souls and worships idols. Now we're here in the 21st century, in the internet age, and conspiracy theories. Now, the evangelical and conspiracy theories started to have a crossover, linking the Catholic Church to the New World Order. This really started spiraling with the QAnon movement from 2017, even till this very day. And this revived a lot of old anti-Catholic tropes, like claims that the Vatican is part of a global child trafficking rings. There was a link between the Pope, the Jesuits, Freemasons, and the Rothschilds. The imagery of the Vatican as the whore of Babylon in Revelation. A lot of fringe channels on YouTube, Facebook, Telegram, and TikTok labeled Catholicism as part of a giant hidden cult. All right, now we're going to go back and talk about this Maria monk. I found this really fascinating because I told a friend I was becoming Catholic, and one of the first things he jumped to was telling me this horrific story of Maria Monk and this book that was written. This sounded crazy, so of course I had to look into it, and this is what I found. So Maria Monk was a young Canadian woman whose name became infamous in the 1830s. In 1836, she published a sensational book called The Awful Disclosures of Maria Monk. In it, she claimed to reveal shocking secrets about the life inside of a Catholic convent in Montreal. Her story described the convent as a place of secrecy, mistreatment, with hidden tunnels, and nuns being pressured into inappropriate relationships with priests. She even alleged that infants were born there and would mysteriously disappear. But when investigators actually visited the convent, none of their claims matched reality. The rooms and tunnels she described didn't even exist. Her story was riddled with errors. In time, it just became clear that Maria had been manipulated by anti-Catholic publishers who wanted to sell a scandalous story. So even though this book was proven false, it still has a very long shadow. It really fueled the idea that Catholicism was this sinister, evil, cult-like system. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more now about how the Vatican and how the Pope have been implemented in this conspiracy theory specifically. And we're going to start with Pope Benedict XVI and his red shoes. So a lot of people online talk about this red shoes club. The claim is that powerful elites wear red shoes as a symbol of involvement in dark, even satanic practices. You'll see pictures of politicians or celebrities in red shoes, and conspiracy circles will say, "See, there's proof that they're part of it." When Pope Benedict XVI brought back the traditional red papal shoes, some people lumped him into those theories. But here's the truth. The Pope's red shoes aren't new, and they aren't part of some secret group. They go back centuries with Catholic tradition. The red shoes represent the blood of Christ and the martyrs. It's a reminder that the Pope walks in the footsteps of those who gave their lives for the faith. Pope Benedict was a very traditional man. He cared deeply about reviving Catholic symbolism and liturgy, and the red shoes were part of that heritage. They were custom made by his cobbler in Rome, not handed down by some hidden society. While conspiracy theories love to grab these images and twist them into something really sinister, the truth is much simpler. The shoes are about Christ's sacrifice, not some secret power. A cult is usually defined by a controlling leader, isolation from the outside world, manipulation, and brand new doctrines. Catholicism does not fit that. It's the oldest Christian tradition. It's open, it's global, it's structured, and it does not financially put pressure on people. But some evangelical groups do drift into cult territory, especially when they derive around a very evangelical preacher. They rely on their own personal interpretation of Scripture and pressure people through fear with financial tactics. I've talked a lot about how these Protestant and evangelical groups have a lot of room to create these cults because of the lack of structure and the ability to just be your own charismatic leader. But how do they get people on board for this? Well, they use scripture. And I'm going to show you right here different Bible verses that some of these people have used to start these cults. And not all of them are specifically linked to Christian doctrine, but they do adopt that end times philosophy. The branch Davidians, started by David Koresh in Waco, Texas in 1993. So the text that he used was the book of Revelation, especially the 7 seals. Koresh taught that he was the, quote, lamb who could open the seals in Revelation 5. His followers believed that he alone could interpret hidden biblical mysteries, leading to stockpilings of weapons for an end-time showdown. The second is the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Adventist roots. So the text that they used was Matthew 24, Revelation 20, and Daniel 7 through 12. They have an obsession with dates and signs of the end of the world. They have one called the Great Disappointment of 1844, started by William Miller predicting Christ's return. It came from a self-interpretation of Daniel 8:14, quote, 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the Jehovah's Witnesses later predicted multiple end dates, 1914, 1925, 1975, using Revelation and Daniel. Number 3, Jim Jones. He started the People's Temple in Jonestown in 1978. The text that he used was the book of Acts, the early church communal living, plus Revelation imagery. He twisted Acts 2, the all things in common, to justify socialism and control. He blended apocalyptic warnings like Babylon will fall with racial and political tension to scare followers into loyalty. Here's one that I've always been really fascinated with. This one is the Heaven's Gate. This was started by Marshall Applewhite in 1997. So the text that he used was John 14, where it says, I go to prepare a place for you, and apocalyptic imagery. So this recast Jesus as an alien who transcended humanity. His followers believed that the Hale-Bopp comet was the chariot to salvation, and Revelation's harvest language became their justification for mass suicide as exiting Earth to the next level. And now the infamous Charles Manson started the Manson family in 1969. The text that he used was Revelation 9 and other apocalyptic passages. He claimed Revelation prophesied a coming race war, also known as Helter, Skelter, which he said the Beatles had hidden in their lyrics. He distorted the Bible to fuel paranoia and violence. Number 6 is some general Protestant cultic tactics. They use Matthew 24, the wars, rumor of wars, as signs of the end. Revelation, beast, antichrist, whore of Babylon, that the leaders assign contemporary meaning, like the Catholic Church or US government technology, using Daniel as the numbers and days used to predict dates for the apocalypse. Apocalyptic texts are very symbolic and mysterious. So without any authority, there's so much room for them to get twisted and misinterpreted. A charismatic leader convinces his followers that only I can decode this. And once that authority is accepted, then they can use the Bible as a tool to manipulate and justify their actions. And this is a lot more about control than faith. All right, that's where I'm going to wrap it up today. We've looked at how Catholicism has been labeled a cult since the earliest days in America, all the way up to the conspiracy theories online. I hope this breakdown gave you some clarity and things to think about. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts and comments. When you do that, it really helps me learn and it gives me ideas of new things to talk about. If you found this helpful, please like the video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. And make sure you hit the notification bell so you'll know when I upload my next video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.